Rachel Reeve's first major speech as Chancellor of the Exchequer today. She's going to centre that around delivering economic growth and, in particular, planning reform to build more houses.
Whether Labour can actually deliver on that promise is something that has been questioned by the Institute of Fiscal Studies, which accused both parties of a conspiracy of silence during the election campaign around the serious challenges facing the economy. So we are joined by the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Are you getting used to your new title?
Although I think I called myself Shadow earlier this morning, so I'm going to need to pay attention.
You're actually in government.
I am.
Right.
Very exciting.
Yes. Have you opened the books?
We've been in the Treasury over the weekend working, receiving briefings from officials, and the Chancellor's giving this, her first major intervention, this speech this morning. First female Chancellor in 800 years to give a speech and to be in office on the importance of growth to getting the public finances on a sustainable footing.
When the previous Labour government handed over to the coalition, there was a note in a drawer saying there's no money left. Did you find a similar note?
Do you know, I opened the drawer and there was nothing in it, so I can only assume they couldn't afford the notepaper.
Well,
Or they learned from history that writing that note was, in retrospect, the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, there's no money.
Well, look, we inherit a fiscal picture, a budget, as we have from the Conservatives. We will set out today how growth is the most important starting point for us in how to tackle those challenges.
When you say growth, obviously the ONS figures for the first quarter showed there is already growth back in our economy.
There's a little bit.
Yeah.
We need it to be better, and we need it to be
sustainable.
sustainable.
So what figure are you putting on growth to achieve what you want to achieve in your manifesto?
Well, look, we would like to get back towards the OECD average on growth. We set out today with a Treasury document. Well, it will depend because it's in the future as opposed to the past. But
OK, so what figure are you setting on growth? If you say that 0.7 is a tiny amount of growth, what is a significant amount of growth, enough growth?
Sure. So what we want is sustainable growth. What I can't do is tell you what the average will be in the future because it will depend on the other countries we compare ourselves to.
But the trouble is that your manifesto said we don't have any plans to raise taxes beyond the VAT on private school fees and getting rid of non-DOM's tax loophole because everything's going to be based on growth. So I'm not sure I know what growth I'm looking at to be confident that you're going to fulfil all your manifesto pledges.
Sure. Well, two slightly different questions. I'll take them in turn, if that's OK. Firstly, in terms of our manifesto, it was fully costed on the basis of those loophole closures that you referred to, VAT on private school fees, non-DOMs, tackling tax avoidance. That's why we were able to make the commitment not to increase income tax, national insurance or VAT on working people for the course of this Parliament. That was an election promise. It's a promise we will honour in office. To your second point, though, on growth, which is what the Chancellor will talk about today, if we had grown at the average rate of the wealthy nations in the past 14 years, we would have had £50 billion more each year right now to spend on public services.
OK, so you're expecting 50 billion?
Well, it's the example of the past, to go back to my answer
I
earlier.
know, I'm talking about what you're going to do and what you're aiming for.
Totally understand. But you've got to get growth back into the economy to make that money available, where people have got great jobs with improving pay, businesses are making profits and paying taxes. We can't keep dipping into recession and bumping along the bottom, which is why you're going to hear from the Chancellor today some pretty radical, strong, immediate interventions to kickstart growth in the economy, as well as recognising that it will take some time for that to come through the system.
Can I ask you about your job right now? You said you were in the Treasury looking at the books yesterday. And there'll be a budget in the autumn, a spending review, a plan for growth. But you face immediate challenges today. You've got the problems in the prisons, you've got universities in financial trouble, some local authorities close to bankruptcy. We know that the contaminated blood inquiry is going to be billions of pounds right now. The post office compensation not yet in the numbers. Planning reform, planning right now costs money. What will you do now to manage all of those pressures from different cabinet ministers saying we need to sort this out today and tomorrow rather than waiting to the autumn? What's your strategy?
Well, of course, you're right. We're going to have to resolve this financial year, and then we get into the focus about the next financial year with a fiscal event budget in the autumn and then the spending plans being set out at that time. But of course, the reason we're talking today about growth is because that's the driving agenda for us right now.
But that's about the future. I'm talking about right now. What is your strategy as Chief Secretary this week when you've got all these different people saying to you, I need the money right now? Are you going to have a process? Are you going to have a hierarchy? What's top of the list of the immediate things where you know you've got to spend money on before the summer?
Well, of course, my colleagues are going to be coming in this week and talking to me about what their pressures are, what they want to try to resolve in this financial year.
But you can't say no to all of them right now.
Well, we're going to have to work that through with them once we've seen what we've inherited from the Conservatives, which I say we've been looking at over the weekend. And then we're going to have to close this financial year before we then get onto the next spending review.
Right now. If you want to do planning reform now, that costs money. The prisons crisis needs money now.
Sure.
We know we've got problems with concrete in schools. Money now.
Yeah.
Are you just going to sort of say, come and see me, and you'll do them in random order? Or is there a plan for which departments you give money to right now?
Well, of course, the budget for this year had been set by our predecessors.
Yeah.
So department spending is within that envelope. If they need to come and ask for additional money, then of course they will do that.
But they are going to do that.
Well, they're going to have to do that.
But they should do that.
And we'll of course talk to them about that.
And how are you going to give it to them?
Well, they've got to come and talk to me first, and I'll tell you afterwards.
Well, but don't you think you need to have a plan?
Well, yes. Well, the plan is we've got to see what we need. So the teams are going to be coming in and setting that out for us, and then we will set out our solutions.
So will you make a statement before the end of July about how you're going to give emergency money where you're facing current emergencies?
Well, look, what we do in the future we'll set out in due course. But of course, our focus today is not just about whining about the mess the Conservatives have left, even though they have left a mess. It's about our focus on a positive, strong approach to getting growth back into the economy. The adults are back in the room.
If you're the Chief Secretary, Chancellors make speeches.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with the money now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And you need a plan right now.
Yeah, and we're working with colleagues across Cabinet to be able to understand what those asks are and to set that out in due course.
In due course means before the summer?
Well, in a matter of weeks, yes, of course, because we need public services to be able to function. But the priority, as I said, is not about us whining today about the mess that we've had from the Conservatives, even though it was a mess. It's about what the changes that this Labour government's going to bring forward and how we're going to invest in the country, get growth back into the country and get public finances back on a sustainable footing.
Because growth takes time, people are worried that you might have all of these people coming to see you saying we need to do things, and you might have to reconsider tax rises. Is that something that you're open-minded about?
We made a very clear promise in the election not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT for the course of this Parliament. We will honour that commitment. That is not in question.
That's those three particular taxes, but there are other taxes, of course, for instance, capital gains tax.
And we were very clear that we had no plans to change taxes. We've been consistently...
You had no plans, or you have no plans?
We have no plans. We've been very clear that the tax burden is too high on working people.
You need the tax burden to rise this Parliament, don't you?
Well, we want the tax burden to come down.
But you need it to rise this Parliament.
But we want it to come down.
If you get more growth, that will mean the tax burden will rise. It's a good thing. You can't sort out the public finances without more tax revenue coming in from growth. That means the tax burden will go up, not down.
Look, what we're making very clear is our promises in the election campaign we will honour in government. That is an absolute commitment. The real difficult question, therefore, is what are the trade-offs going to be? And look, I've been very clear with people, as has the Chancellor, that there's going to be difficult decisions, especially to begin with. We're not going to be able to do everything that everybody wants us to do. We're going to focus on our missions and our first steps, which were fully funded and fully costed in our manifesto. And then we're going to focus on growth and stability in the public finances. And it will take a little bit of time for us to be able to turn that around. But we're not promising that we're just going to click our fingers and fix everything overnight, and we're not going to go back on our promises not to increase income tax.
Do you think the overall tax burden could come down this Parliament?
We want the tax burden to come down.
The overall tax burden, percentage of GDP, should fall over the Parliament? That's not in the manifesto.
We want well, we said it every day in the election campaign.
Tax burden, not on working people, for the whole economy.
We want the tax burden on working people to come down.
No, I didn't ask that. The tax burden on the whole economy, as a percentage of GDP, should the tax burden fall or rise?
Well, of course, one of the challenges with the tax burden percentage is the size of the economy. If our growth policies are successful, the economy will grow, and therefore the tax burden will start to come down.
The fiscal drag will mean that it will go up. It's a good thing. You need it to go up.
Well, look, let's catch up when our growth policies are in place and the economy is moving. But our commitments are very clear. We will honour what we've put forward in the manifesto and in the election campaign and work on that basis.
It sounds to me like you're not ruling out reconsidering changes to capital gains tax.
I was very clear that we are making a commitment to the promises we made in the election campaign. Of course, there will be a budget in the autumn when the Chancellor will set out the full fiscal picture and all of the details of our plans then. But we are going to honour our promises. It's really, really important that I stress that.
This
is a generational
opportunity. You're talking about
opportunity.
national insurance, VAT and income tax not being tinkered with.
Yeah.
That's your promise. But I'm not talking about those taxes. I'm talking about other taxes.
Sure.
And whether people can expect that actually other taxes you might start reconsidering?
There was no secret tax plan. There is not a secret tax plan. This was an attack from the Conservatives. It is not a reflection of reality. Our manifesto commitments, our priorities that we're now implementing, our first 6 steps and our missions are funded with the loophole changes that were in the back of the manifesto that people voted for last Thursday. Our focus now is about getting a grip of the public finances, getting the adults back in the room and focusing on growth to have a sustainable outcome for the economy.
But just to be clear, you can keep all of your promises on tax, and if you get a stronger, growing economy, the tax burden can go up in this Parliament, not down, right?
Well, let's see where we end up on the stats, but we want the tax burden to come down on working people. That was our clear
Working
commitment.
people.
Okay. Darren Jones, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. That was our first Good Morning Britain interview with the government minister. My first, but
Labour
the
government
programmes
minister, in our history.
In our history.
Yeah, there we go. Let us know what you think.
You will always be the first government minister ever to be interviewed on Good Morning Britain.
And the first Darren
Labour
minister.
From Labour.
And the first Darren minister. I was the first Darren MP in the House of Commons. I think I might be the first minister ever called Darren. And I was the first one on your show as trio of first. I mean, I could retire now.
It's a historic moment.
First Labour government minister, first guy called Darren.
Yeah.
Which is more significant?
I'm not sure.